everybody, Trevor here, and welcome to another Top 5 video. And because my avatar is black and white, we'll be discussing my top 5 favorite cartoons from the golden age of animation. When I was a kid, I was first introduced to most of these on Cartoon Network, Boomerang, and Disney Channel. And to be honest, I loved most of them, even to this day. However, many of which are in the public domain like the Max Fleischer shorts. There are many reasons why I enjoy these classic cartoon shorts, with one of them being the fluid animation, as well as some of the hilarious jokes, even at the time. As I grew older, I started to enjoy these cartoons even more because I learned about the history of them from my dad, who was born in 1944. Man, I love learning about the past, especially with my beloved dad. Anyway, for this list, I'm only going to include the theatrical shorts for their time, so that means no television animation like Gumby, Rocky and Bullwinkle, or anything by Hanna-Barbera. I might make a video about that, but not today. So without wasting any more time, let's travel back in time to see these nostalgic cartoons. Number 5. The Color Classics series. These shorts were made by Fleischer Studios as a competitor to Disney's Silly Symphony shorts from 1934 to 1941. Many of these were mostly kid-friendly, and don't rely on mature humor like the Looney Tunes had. They also don't have reoccurring characters, but just some minor and forgotten ones. Their first one was Poor Cinderella starring Betty Boop, which is a basic adaptation of Cinderella. While I'm not obsessed with Betty Boop that much, but she is quite cute and charming like Disney's Snow White in terms of her black hair and voice. They had other good classics too, such as Small Fry, which is about a kid fish who wants to be rough and tough like the other adult fish at the saloon, but ends up running home scared in the end. But my most favorite of the bunch would have to be the 1936 short, Play Safe, which is about a little boy who wants to become an engineer, but wasn't allowed to leave the backyard due to his guardian St. Bernard companion trying to keep him safe from harm. After he makes his escape plan, he rides the train, then falls down and gets knocked out unconscious, leading to a dream sequence. Like Little Nemo, this is my favorite part of the short because it starts off as a good dream, but eventually takes a dark turn after the little boy gets the big blue engine all fired up and going too fast. That's when the gauges come to life and tell him to play safe, as well as the big blue engine calling out, "Beware! Take care!" Meanwhile, the dog manages to escape from his collar and leash just to run and save the little boy from getting run over by the oncoming train. Man, that had me on edge. Luckily, the boy was saved and back to consciousness in the end. Now, what I love about these classic shorts is not only the cute characters and interesting stories, but also some of the life lessons that they teach to their audience. For instance, Play Safe is about learning to play safe, especially around railroad tracks. Another instance was in the 1939 short, Small Fry, where everyone has a soft spot inside of them and that no child should go into a bar just to be tough like the others. But the biggest reason these are number 5 is because many of them are in the public domain, and there were only 36 shorts made. However, there was a series of shorts known as Novel Tunes, which became the successor to it from 1943 to the late 1960s. Number 4 is Popeye the Sailor Man. The Color Classics weren't the only ones made by Max Fleischer. There was also Popeye, who was one of my most favorite cartoon characters of all time. The premise is about a muscular sailor named Popeye, whose goal was to win the affections of Olive Oyl, but must defeat his rival Bluto to win the match. Now, in almost every episode, Bluto does most of the beating on his victim Popeye, but when there seems to be no hope for Popeye left, he then eats a can of spinach to get more buff and invincible to fight back Bluto and defeat him once and for all. This is called a Deus Ex Machina, which is a plot device whereas in the story, the hero seems to be in a pickle and seems to have no hope left, only to be abrupted and resolved by an unexpected and unlikely occurrence, such as eating a can of spinach. And at the end of every short, when Popeye wins victorious, he sings his song, "I'm strong to the finish, 'cause I eats me spinach. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Toot toot!" One of my favorite moments in the show was when Popeye would say, I am what I am. Because, yam is a type of food. When it comes to the Popeye cartoons in general, I always prefer the original 30s, 40s, and 50s shorts in terms of better humor as well as the fluid animation. The television shorts, on the other hand, don't seem that interesting to me because they feel cheap. I'm so glad I grew up with the original theatrical shorts on television back in my day. Oh, and fun fact, did you know that the character Popeye was inspired by a real life person named Frank Rocky Fiegel? With the big muscles, pipe, and being toothless? The only difference between him and Popeye is that Frank was really a bartender, not a sailor. Learn something new every day, am I right? And those are the reasons why I think Popeye is the best cartoon ever made by Fleischer Studios. So therefore, I highly recommend it. Coming at number 3 are various classic Disney shorts. There are so many classic shorts by Walt Disney that I enjoyed. It's kind of hard for me to decide which ones are my most favorite. Well, for starters, I enjoyed some of the Silly Symphonies, with my most favorite of them all being Musicland, which is a basic forbidden love story between a saxophone prince and a violin princess, just like Romeo and Juliet. Another one of my favorite shorts was Susie the Little Blue Coupe, which was the inspiration for Pixar's Cars. This 1952 short was narrated by Sterling Holloway, who was the original voice of many classic Disney characters including Winnie the Pooh, Kaa the Python, and the Cheshire Cat, just to name a few. And this story is about a beautiful brand new blue coupe who had a great long life until she started to age and suffer throughout most of the story, like being neglected out in the cold and being stolen by a crook leading to a police car chase. But thankfully, in the end, a young man decides to buy her from the junkyard and gave her new improvements to make her young and fresh again. What I like about this short is its subtle message about miracles, and that good things do come in the end after facing hardship. Or something like that. Sorry, I'm not very good at understanding subtle morals. Oh, and another thing I like about this short is that I used to be a big fan of cars when I was a kid. I would line up all my Hot Wheels and Match cars in a straight line, just for fun. Let's talk about one more series of shorts. When it comes to shorts starring Mickey Mouse characters, my favorites will always be the Donald Duck ones because his voice and temper crack me up. Or should I say, quack me up, lol. A perfect example of a great Donald Duck short would be Out of Scale, which is about Donald Duck making a model railroad on his property, which I think is really cool. I mean, after all, Walt Disney loved trains when he was alive. In conclusion, I still love most of these Disney shorts to this day because not only they're nostalgic, but also because of the entertainment. And if you're a classic Disney fan like I am, then I highly recommend watching these. Number 2 is Tom and Jerry. I've talked about them before in my top 10 Cartoon Network shows video, and I'll try to keep it brief here. This cartoon is about a cat named Tom and a mouse named Jerry. They like to antagonize each other no matter what. They are also one of the most iconic cartoon duos of all time. One of my favorite episodes was Solid Serenade, where a cat plays a bass violin to a white girl cat and sings, "Is you is or is you ain't my baby." Man, that was a catchy song. Another one of my favorite episodes was Slicked Up Pup, where Tom was tasked by Spike to watch over his son Tyke to make sure he stays clean, only for the situation to get worse throughout the short. All in all, when it comes to theatrical shorts by Hanna-Barbera, Tom and Jerry is one of the best cartoons of all time for its genius slapstick, charming characters, and extremely funny humor. And if you're a big fan of mild cartoon violence, then this is the perfect show for you. Before I get to my number 1 pick, I just want to give a few honorable mentions. Felix the Cat. I honestly thought this show was kind of weird, even for its time. And considering the movie from the 1980s being one of the worst films from my childhood, I decided to omit him from the list. Betty Boop. She would have been number 4. Droopy. He would have been number 2. And my number 1 most favorite classic cartoon from the golden age of animation of all time is the Looney Tunes. Ah yes, the Looney Tunes. There are so many reasons why they're in the number 1 spot. For one thing, They have some of the most hilarious and most memorable cartoon characters of all time, including Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Elmer Fudd, Foghorn Leghorn, and Tweety Bird, just to name some. One of my favorite gags in the show was when Bugs Bunny dresses as a girl just to trick Elmer Fudd into thinking he's a woman. And another instance was when in one episode, he tricks Elmer Fudd into getting rabbititis, which doesn't really exist. And because the Looney Tunes were so successful even back then, Warner Bros. Decided to release many spin-off shows in later decades, including Baby Looney Tunes, Duck Dodgers, and my most favorite of them all, The Looney Tunes Show of 2011, which I put in my number 10 Cartoon Network shows as number 10. Now I know this is irrelevant to the video, but when it comes to my own Kingdom Hearts fanfiction, I like to use most of these Looney Tune characters to replace the Mickey Mouse ones. For example, I'd use Bugs, Daffy, and Porky to replace Mickey, Donald, and Goofy, while the bad guys like Elmer Fudd, Yosemite Sam, Marvin Martian, and even Sylvester will play as major villains of the series, replacing Pete, as well as those from Organization 13. In conclusion, because these cartoon characters are so hilarious, entertaining, and memorable, they deserve the number 1 spot for best classic cartoon of all time. Now let me know in the comments section on which of these classic cartoon shorts are your favorite. Do you agree with my list, or do you have your own personal preference? Join me next time where I'll be discussing my top 5 favorite Nintendo characters of all time, since I've recently seen the new Super Mario Bros. Movie in the theater. And let me tell you, it was really great. This is Trevor Davis, and I hope you all have a wonderful Easter this year.